This is Dr. Fritz Gillette here, coming to you live from the studios of WWRL here in New York City, streaming on the internet at WWRL1600.com. And it is Thursday night, 10 p.m., and we are here once again for the Dr. Fritz Show. And I'm here with my co-host, Melissa Nicoletti. Welcome.
Thanks.
Of course, we've been using the show as a place for people to call in post-Sandy. This is 5 weeks since Sandy.
Done a lot of outreach, yes.
And I know, Melissa, you've been active reaching out to people and letting them know what we're doing. So,
well, you know, we've been lucky. We got to talk to Senator Golden about his efforts in Garrettson Beach specifically. A lot of those people, Garrettson Beach, Sandy Relief has called in. We've heard from the Rockaways, our man on the scene, Patty Tubbs in Breezy, John Corey, and others. We heard from Senator-elect Sanders.
Mm-hmm. James
Sanders representing the Rockaways. We had a lot of people calling in, and it's been a lot of help to be able to put together people who want to volunteer and donate their time, donate supplies with people who need them. And it's great to be able to use this forum to do it.
So if you're out there, live phone number here, 212-868-0975, 212-868-0975 is the number you want to call if you want to talk to us here. We have a program here tonight, action-packed here, some excellent guests in the studio, but we like to open up the lines in the beginning of the show for people to call in and just give us a shout-out and tell us what they're doing, especially with regards to Sandy.
How are they coping? What do you need? There's a lot of concerts. There's a lot of benefits, a lot of things going on in various communities that people can get involved in, easy to donate to. I know all of these areas still need things like diapers, baby wipes. They still need food, garbage bags, cleaning supplies. It's going to be going on for a very long time. And I think that most people who aren't in New York don't understand it. Oh, it's not cleaned up yet? It's not done?
No, many places in the city, it looks like it never happened, whereas in other parts of the city, it looks like, obviously it looks like a natural disaster.
Things we take for granted, like not having access to an ATM. What happened to you if your bank closed? People do occasionally have to go to the bank.
People's local supermarkets have closed down, and they have to go to other communities. Pharmacies.
So I'd like to hear from these communities. How are you doing? How are you getting by? What do you need? Or who's helping you? What can we do for you? 212-868-0975. If you know of an organization or you know of an area that needs help, let us know. We'll shout it out. We'll put it on the Dr. Fritz Show Facebook page. Like us. And we'll get some help to people who need it.
And you want to find out more about the program, give us check us out at the drfritzshow.com website, and there we post information about what we do. Also, this podcast, this recording of this live show, will be there available shortly, so that's where you can go to get that information. Of course, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. There you can also see the postings that Melissa's talking about. So without further ado, Melissa, I think it's time for us. Or we got any other announcements to make before we jump into the conversation? And we have someone who's calling in.
I'm waiting to hear from Patty Tubbs, actually, our man on the scene, or we'll check in with him. It's I know phone service has been a bit spotty.
Okay, so let's actually just pre-announce the topic tonight, because this episode is sponsored by Emblem Health.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've been listening all around TV and media, you're hearing the message of Emblem Health. They're talking about a message of care. And in line with this show's mission, what we've been trying to do with this show since we started a year ago, Melissa, if you remember, what we're trying to do is spread information, people and practices to help enrich people's lives.
The psychology of everyday life.
Psychology of everyday life.
Right.
And what this opportunity has brought us is a lot of people that are doing good within the communities, a lot of people that are working to help people. And so one of our first major sponsor is Emblem Health, and what they're doing in helping us keep this show alive and spread the message is allow us to do what we're doing here. And we have been talking about family caregiving. This is number 5 in a series that we've been doing with them. But so it started with us first defining what family caregiving is, and then we talked about what people can do, and I identified myself as a family caregiver. I've been the ongoing client.
It's been a big theme that people don't know that they're actually family caregiving. They think they're just doing what they're supposed to do. You've got an elderly relative, or you've got a sick parent or a sick spouse that you are the primary caregiver for. That means you're doing their grocery shopping, you're picking up prescriptions, you're helping with paperwork, you're providing hours of unpaid help while you maybe hold down a job and have kids of your own. And we were talking about identifying as a family caregiver. That's what you are. You are keeping this person out of maybe the healthcare system.
And so we've been talking about what you can do, where to reach out for help, who to ask for help, and what kind of help to ask for, how to maintain your psychological, emotional, and your spiritual.
We had that great book, Share the Care, and we still have copies of that. We will maybe give a copy away tonight. That might be kind of fun. Sheila Warnock's book, Share the Care. If you are a caregiver, suddenly you are charged with caring for an elderly relative, a neighbor, a family member, and you don't know how. This is a step-by-step instruction book, how to put together care, how to get people involved, helping a group get together and share the care. So it's not the burden of one person. And everybody gets to feel good participating in that way. That's what I like.
So if you're just tuning in to the Dr. Fritz Show for the first time and hearing us talking about family caregiving, you can go to our site to get the prior episodes where we talked about all of this stuff. But tonight what we're going to focus on are some of the legal and financial issues relating to family caregiving. And we have two dynamic and very accomplished and experienced guests here in the studio who are going to be talking from either perspective. The lines, of course, will be open as usual for people to call in if they have questions for our experts here, 212-868-0975. 212-868-0975. Melissa, let's introduce our first guest here in the studio tonight.
Well, we've got two guests, and our first guest is Adrienne Berg, CEO of Generation Bold.
Hi, I am really happy to be here.
And you are, tell us what Generation Bold is. In addition, you are also the author of How Not to Go Broke at 102.
Yes. Well, Generation Bold is a consultant to companies that want to reach the boomers, the caregivers, and the seniors. And they may be technology companies or financial companies or nutrition companies. All across the board, it's a huge demographic with a big need. But for many years, I swam in the waters of financial planning and elder law. And so How Not to Go Broke at 102 is my latest book for people who are really planning to live that long, as many of us are, because the demographic shows that we are aging very well, but very costly.
And we don't want to outlive our money.
Right. We certainly want our money to last as long as we do.
Yep. You read about people eating cat food, and I don't want to be one of those people.
And we've suffered through a number of tough economic years, especially in the last 5 years for a lot of people. And the idea of trying to not go broke by 102, a lot of people are trying to actually not go
daunting.
Broke by now.
Yeah, it's pretty daunting. Yeah, there's a great joke. I will just simply take a late retirement and an early death, and I might just get by. Because we are working longer. We're really concerned with that, making that dollar stretch. There's an elder CPI now, cost of a consumer price index for people who are older, which takes a look at what things really cost us as we age. It's different because there are fewer kids, less overhead, and a lot more health care.
So how did you get into this? How did you decide that this is what you want to do?
I was an elder law attorney for a very, very long time. And when we talked to our esteemed second guest or co-guest, Bob Friedman, he taught me a lot. And we started, among many other lawyers, the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. So I swam in that waters for a very long time, but began to write about personal finance. Wrote a lot of books on personal finance. And lo and behold, guess what happened? I got older too. And started our business and really understood how to market to the older adult. And so it was a labor of love that continues to this day. And I really recommend people who are older thinking about late life entrepreneurship, as I did.
Like a second and third career.
Absolutely. Retirement, not retirement.
Rehirement, not retirement.
Even if you have to hire yourself, which I had to.
Okay, well then, as long as we're introducing our guest, let's introduce our second guest, Robert Friedman. Robert Friedman practices. His focus is he's an attorney who practices elder law and planning for individuals with disabilities and their families. You are a pioneer in the field of elder law. Robert, explain what it is that brought you into that field.
First, let me thank you for having me here. What brought me into the field is that there was a huge demand out there. I used to work at a place called the Brookdale Center on Aging, and we would get phone calls from spouses saying, my husband's got Alzheimer's disease. What do I do? How do I pay for it? And I didn't know where to send them. At the time when I was doing this 30 years ago, the term Alzheimer's disease wasn't known. I remember going to a lecture by Bob Butler, one of the founders of the field, walking away saying, what was he saying, old-timers disease? And he pointed out that there was no money for research on that or any other form of dementia. And so we started, along with Adrian, groups of attorneys as a way of bringing the information so that people would know how to address these issues, what legal documents they need, how they're going to pay for their, for the care, what services are out there, and turning them on to other organizations that offer a lot of help to them if people reach out to them.
So now you and Adrian founded or were original founders of the New York City Family Caregiving Coalition.
That was the outgrowth of realizing that, I focused on the legal issues, but the caregiving is more than just legal. There's a lot of and it affects everybody,
Right.
Every family. It's hard to tell anyone who doesn't have to care for an elderly parent or a disabled sibling. And so we just felt that they needed information and they needed assistance.
Yes, and that assistance could be financial. It could be coping with the resistance that the older person has to being helped. It could be navigating a whole entitlement system where you don't know the right agencies and who to go to, and you keep repeating your story over and over again. And it also could be coping with siblings that are further away or that are concerned that you're not doing the right thing. So, and now this has morphed into a realization that a lot of caregivers are on the job. So it might be also balancing working with an older adult, making sure they're okay all day long, but you're at work. So that these are really stress factors for the boomer and the caregiver.
Now, it's tough enough, and we've been talking about just self-identification, getting people to recognize that they're a family caregiver.
Yes, big issue.
And you've written a book about not going broke by 102. How do we get people to go from that self-identification to actually doing something financial to prepare themselves for the future?
Well, first of all, as you say, unfortunately, most people have a crisis before they make a move. And they will go to an attorney such as Bob Friedman, and they will be in crisis at that time and hope that he can do something so that they can be entitled to Medicaid or other programs. But I think that this is changing in a good way, that people are realizing that they will live longer. They're seeing what happened with their parents. They're surprised at how quickly money flows out the window when you need long-term care, and they're sitting down and making pre-plans. It could be insurance, because they may be very insurable and have long-term care insurance. It could be annuities that have special features that kick in if they cannot take care of themselves and they want to live at home. And so the first is noticing and self-acknowledgement. Then the second step is taking the financial plan to a planner. You should know that there are financial planners, but there are financial gerontologists now.
Financial gerontologists.
Yes, there are people with special designations. American Institute of Financial Gerontology gives certifications for things like that. And so people are beginning to understand that there's a wealth span, not just a wealth plan.
And is there a way to help somebody people who are living paycheck to paycheck? How do you take somebody with really nothing in the bank and
There are
give them
a lot of services out there that are free and paid for and are available to people who qualify for them. First of all, in terms of information, the New York Department for the Aging, New York City Department for the Aging offers a lot of information and referrals. Organizations like the Alzheimer's Association will sit down and have support groups. All of this stuff is free and available. For people who need more assistance and maybe you need some help with home care or services like that, Medicare may cover some of it, but to the extent it doesn't, there are programs like Medicaid, which will provide services to people who don't have the money to pay for it. You've got to go out there and the information as to accessing them, it's out there. You have to just be kind of focused in your things, starting with maybe the Department for the Aging, getting some referrals and moving on.
Now, again, people can go to a few places where they can find out everything that would support them on a financial basis. There's a great navigator system, which we have in this country, divided the country into areas on aging. And if you want to find out the person to contact in your area, you go to n4a.gov. And it's a navigator system.
N4A.gov?
NC4.gov.
And you do that, and you will get to be sent to the right place for the kind of services you need. So we have that. The IRS, believe it or not, has free services for taxes and tax help and understanding for older adults. And many older adults are very stressed out. They have not filed their tax returns. They think they're criminals. They don't tell people about it. They get really terrible stress situations. They don't have to. They can have all this done for them free of charge. That's another thing.
You would never think to call the IRS for something like that.
You can. There's the SNAP program, which is a senior nutrition program where you can get food stamps and other food subsidies, and you're not necessarily Medicaid eligible to be eligible for that program. We work with the coalition now, for Caregivers Coalition, is working with Golden Cuisine, specialized foods for older adults, to go into the workplace and offer Golden Cuisine meals to caregivers to bring home, because sometimes they can't prepare a meal. Often that is covered. Sometimes it's not, but it's well priced. So there's a lot of help you can get. And outside of the federal government, you might want to look at a website which was created by the National Council on Aging, and it is benefitscheckup.org, benefitscheckup.org, and benefitscheckuprx.org, which will give you all of the prescription drug programs where you may be entitled to some relief with regard to your prescriptions.
If you're just tuning in, we are talking to Adrienne Berg, CEO of Generation Bold and author of How Not to Go Broke at 102. And we are talking with Robert Friedman, elder law lawyer, and we are getting a plan to not outlive our money. All of the information that we're giving you tonight, we will put on the show notes. We will put on the Dr. Fritz Show Facebook page. Like us.
Follow us.
Follow us. And this, if you're driving, don't worry. The information will be available, and we want everybody to have it. We were talking in the green room before we got on the air about the concept of successful aging. Adrienne, you introduce that term to us.
Well, you know what I don't like, and that's anti-aging. You know what anti-aging means? It means not aging. I don't want to not age because the alternative is terrible. I got a better suggestion. Let's do successful aging. And one of the things I pointed out is that at a certain time in life, it actually is an inspiration to accept the fact that success is not necessarily improving, but it's maintaining. And so when you are a caregiver and you feel that you're not able to cure, you really have to forgive yourself on that. And I know Emblem Health loves to say, through Dr. Johnson, it's caring, not curing. But caring is a very important part of it. And that is part of successful aging. Maintaining your lifestyle, staying independent, being as robust as you can, having cognitive fitness exercises, physical fitness exercises. It doesn't mean that you're going to turn back the clock.
Right. Suddenly you're going into the Olympics.
Right. Even if you want to. You won't. And most people don't want to. They're contented where they are. They finally found out who they are. So the idea then is to maintain that life for as long as you can in the best way that you can. That's a success.
So to recap, what we're talking about here, and I love this, this is awesome information. We've talked about once self-identifying yourself, you've got to work on establishing a plan, and there's plenty of opportunities you can have out there for information. You've talked about n4.gov, benefitscheckup.org as well. And this concept of successful aging, life has its process, and we're often fighting the process and ignoring the beauty of something that's been around for millions of years. And so inhibiting decline and caring for somebody and you know, not putting yourself in a position where you're expecting yourself to cure somebody, we know where this is going to go. And being part of the family caregiving process, being with someone that you care about, I mean, that's been that experience for me. Watch my father, quote unquote, decline over the past few years, but having the opportunity to be there has been very rewarding. So I want to thank you for that.
Yes, I have been a friendly visitor. My mom passed when she was 92 and I was 60 years old. And I very soon became a friendly visitor to an older gentleman. And it was just a wonderful contribution to him, but he made much more of a contribution to me, no question about it. And he loved to write poetry. Nobody was really paying attention. I took down his poetry. I entered into a contest for people over the age of 70, and he won.
Hey.
And his poem was called Auto Ship, and it was about going on a hearse.
Ooh.
Auto ship. It was very, very funny.
Okay. When we were talking about a concept of overcoming resistance. And Robert, you say when people land in your office, usually there's a crisis, or there's a family trying to make decisions for someone who's not able to make them for themselves.
And we can deal with a crisis, and if there's a crisis, you should reach out and get help. It's better if you can reach out before the crisis hits. Aging is, you can successfully age, but there are going to be issues that are going to occur. You're going to have issues at 80 that you didn't face at 50 or 60. A lot of them are going to be health care. Some of them are going to be financial. And you can do preparation for it. There are legal documents that everybody should have to prepare for their successful aging, to make sure that things are in place for the successful aging. You need a financial plan. You need a legal plan. People are beginning to realize that. People take care of their parents and realize that when it came to making medical decisions, they didn't know what mom wanted or anything. And they say to me, okay, I had to make those decisions for mom. I didn't know what she wanted. I want to make sure that my kids know what I want.
So when is a good time to begin doing this? On
Some
the
of
legal
that
side
stuff
of
you
it?
should do
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we talk about legal documents like in New York it's called a healthcare proxy to make medical decisions. If I can't make a medical decision, I appoint my son to make the decision for me, or my wife to make the decision for me. Something could happen to me tomorrow, so it's better if I do it now. But those issues are even more likely to come up as you grow older. And if you don't want doctors making decisions for you, you want your wishes, you have to take the steps. Healthcare proxy is appointing somebody to make medical decisions. We have people do what are called HIPAA releases, medical privacy releases. It's a note to the doctor saying, you can share my medical information with my daughter. Maybe you wanted to keep it private at some point. Now you may need the daughter's help to get through it.
Sure.
And the daughter has to have access in order to help you. So we do forms like that.
What
We
about-
do a power of attorney,
I was going to ask.
which is a financial one because, if you get sick and somebody's got to pay the bills and, nobody can pay the bills, what's going to happen? Power of attorney enables you to say, okay, look, if something happens to me, my son, he'll pay the bills. He'll take care of me.
And can you take that back if somebody's, let's just say, not being as efficient with the money?
You can take it back, and you have to be careful you don't give it to somebody you don't trust. But
Right.
We're talking about clients who are at 70 or more. Their kids are in their 40s. By then, you probably have some sense of whether or not you can trust them,
Sure.
or which kids you can trust, or which kids have problems. So you know who you can kind of rely on. And if it's not a child, it could be a nephew, it could be a neighbor, somebody who you really trust, to act in your wishes. And by doing that, you keep control because they'll know what you want and they'll follow through on what you want. So you get the care you want, and they will be in place to help effectuate it.
So a good time to start. I mean, we're going to try to really pin us on that because a lot of people who are listening are going to say, yeah, this is for someone that's older. This is for someone in another situation.
Well, if I had to arbitrarily pick one, it's always good when you hit like retirement. You've retired.
All right.
Now many people are in their 60s.
Okay.
You're going to have to start facing some things you'd like to have done earlier, but that's a good time to sit down and say, okay, now I've got to plan the next 30 years of my life, 65 to 95. And these are some of the issues that are going to be out there, and let me take care of that. Let me plan the next 30 years. And if you plan it better, you'll be more successful at it.
I think boomers will do it because they see what's happening to their parents. The trick is for the older adults, the people who are currently older adults, 70s, 80s, 90s, and even more, who are resistant to this because they see it as possibly an imposition, possibly a decline, possibly a dependency. So, Generation Bold is basically a consulting company, but does a lot of marketing. And what I learned is the importance of words, even more than when I was a lawyer. So we do have a spin. We like to call it longevity planning. And we like to sit down and have clients think about how they're going to plan for their longevity as opposed to their health care. Because that sounds like planning for decline.
Yeah.
Instead of planning for decline, we're going to plan for long life. In fixing your home, even maybe with a ramp or some other things that would have been unthinkable. and people are very resistant to it. They'd rather not move and not have navigation and mobility than use a scooter. Well, because if you talk about it as something for your mobility, for your being able to shop and stay independent, it's a different spin than talking about that you need it. You have to have it. If you don't have a scooter, you won't get around and you'll get sicker and decline. No, instead, put a positive spin and positive words. Believe it or not, it does work.
I think that's very important,
Very important.
To overcome the resistance. And I think for me, it would be difficult to tell my mother, you need to do this, you need to do that, because the role has always been reversed.
It's absolutely true, and we have a lot of clients in technology, and some of that technology is in the field of digital health. That really makes a difference, or PERS, personal emergency response systems, the fallen and I can't get up kind of things. And older adults
I want one of those.
Yeah, we do. Absolutely, but older adults are very resistant to that. And when we talk about it as helping stay independent and out of hospitals, it's much different than saying, well, if you fall, it's dangerous. Because they're not going to fall. They don't want that.
Right.
thought.
I'm not going to be left on the floor
Yeah.
for 2 days, and no one's
Not going to happen to me.
No.
Reminding our listeners the lines are open, 212-868-0975. If you've got a question about legal or financial issues relating to family caregiving, give us a call, 212-868-0975. Some really stimulating conversation. I love our direction moving toward positive talk around the aging process and family caregiving. We need that. It's woven into our language to see it as something negative and something we're supposed to resist. It's woven into our marketing to have that term out there called anti-aging. Let's stop focusing on that and focus on the positive aspects of this process.
And people forget that they're going to get older and that they're going to age.
And Adrian's so correct about the technology. We're all sitting here around computers and
Yes.
taking pictures and things like that. If grandma's got the little iPad or whatever she's got there, she can be talking to the grandchildren who live across the country. And,
And seeing them.
And seeing them. And that will let them know how she's doing. 'Cause
Right.
they'll be able to see her, which is always reassuring. And she'll be able to become a bigger part of their lives that way. This is something that couldn't happen years ago.
We're going to take a short break. We're going to stay right on this conversation. I love where it's going, and we'll be right back in a few moments. This is the Dr. Fritz Show. Welcome back. Dr. Fritz Collette here, live at the studios of WWRL in New York City, streaming on the internet at WWRL1600.com. We've been talking about family caregiving, legal and financial issues, and during the break, we were talking about caregiving issues from the perspective of sibling issues. And so let's jump into the conversation and talk about that.
Well, that was triggered by Bob Friedman's suggestion that technology allows you to talk to your grandkids and your family all over the country.
Facebook.
And Facebook, Skype, and so on. There are even special readers, Facebook readers, Twitter readers, where you don't have a Twitter or Facebook account of your own, but you could read anything posted by grandkids on Facebook and Twitter if they're posted specifically for you. So the technology is wonderful. Now, what does that have to do with siblings and family? Well, there was a time when you really had a very difficult situation. You might have one family member, usually the daughter, frankly, who lived near mom or dad.
Right.
That was the caregiver. Everybody else had moved to somewhere else, and they didn't know what was going on, how mom was being taken care of. They were either wondering whether or not money and items and possessions and mom herself were being taken away from them, right? So that there was some jealousy or concern. And then the person who was the caregiver was beleaguered. They had to take care of everybody. So they felt anger because nobody was helping them. Their other siblings weren't helping them.
Sure.
Well, with all the new technology, it doesn't have to be that way.
That's right.
Everybody can be a participant in help. There can be virtual visits. There can be all kinds of understanding what's going on with mom. Mom can also have a better relationship with everyone, be happier, have more connectivity and more communication. But sometimes, now I'm going to throw this over to Bob, it's not so easy as I'm making it sound. And sometimes there really are some issues that get duked out in a legal way.
the only when that happens, the only ones who come out ahead, it's certainly not mom if she's caught between two kids, and it's not either of them. It's the lawyer who gets to deal with it. And what we try to do is when people who work in elder law, we try to work with the family as a whole. We try to get them to work together. Everyone's not going to do things equally, but you want to make sure that the person who's living farther away knows what's going on. You want to make sure that everyone gets involved in the caregiving, and everyone's on the same page in terms of helping mom. And it can be done. I mean, families will, many times, siblings may not like each other, but I've heard them say time and time again, I'll do anything for my mother. My sister and I had fights all the thing. Either of us will do anything for mom. And you work with that. And I think that there are social workers who work with it. There are plenty of community people who work with it, and there are lawyers who will work with that.
And I don't want to get too far afield, but one of the wonderful things about technology is also that people are able to travel together better. There are groups that I work with all the time that allow an older adult, even with frailty, even with cognitive problems, to travel. What does that mean? That means that once a year, all the relatives from all over the country could get together for intergenerational travel. Because we work with a lot of our clients who are in the travel industry, we've got the research. Intergenerational travel is really skyrocketing. People want to travel with their older adult parents, and sometimes they're going back to the roots or the old country, or they're going to big venues where the grandkids, like
Family
Orlando,
reunions and stuff.
family reunions in Orlando, and everybody's got a T-shirt with the name on it, and it says, "This is what 90 looks like," and all kinds of cool stuff. So put it all together. It is a different world. It's a happier picture than it used to be, on the one hand. On the other hand, because the fastest growing demographic are people over the age of 100, really. The second, people over the age of 85, is that we have more older people. And more older people has more frailty, more disability. So it has to be balanced. That good news and that bad news has to be balanced and acknowledged. And the caregiver is sometimes caught because they see other people's parents still traveling, still together, still being able to do everything, and their parents can't. We all age differently, and nobody is at fault when it comes to that. And so we have to accept it. I know during the break you were also talking about the Alzheimer's Association. It's very frightening to a caregiver when their parents have Alzheimer's because we think about genetics. So, and to watch a robust individual decline mentally when they're physically fine is also very difficult. And sometimes it comes with peculiar conduct, like elder rage. And these are things that people have to acknowledge that
Elder
they can't
rage?
handle. Yeah, well, that's a phrase of a book that was written called Elder Rage by a person who lived through their father's Alzheimer's and the rage that he showed, and it was very difficult to handle him. But sometimes if you have a husband and a wife and one of them has an impairment, the other person who's just as old as they are is the caregiver. Yeah. We think of
Right.
caregivers and the coalition, the Caregiving Coalition, and what Emblem Health has been supporting are people who are working caregivers. But many caregivers are 80 years old themselves.
Right.
So to handle that is a very delicate kind of situation. And very often you do need family intervention, very serious family intervention, because mom is being abused or even dad is being abused by somebody who was their best friend all of a sudden because of Alzheimer's.
You mentioned the Alzheimer's Association offers huge amount of programs regarding legal and financial planning, safe return where people get bracelets, so if they get lost, there's a number you call that's coded so they won't know who the person calling in won't know who it is, but it'll go to a 800 number and tell people. Alzheimer's Association now has a big presence and does all these programs. When I first started in practice, one of the reasons I got into it is we had people call us. They were 4 wives, husbands had actually 3 wives and 1 husband, spouses had Alzheimer's disease. And they met and they started talking and they formed sort of a support group for each other. And that was sort of the beginning of the New York City chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. It was people getting together, supporting one another. It's so, caregivers, it's a lot of pressure. But there are support groups out there. Alzheimer's runs support groups. They run them for spouses. They run them for children. They run them for siblings. And it is so helpful and reassuring as a caregiver to talk to somebody else who's going through it. And it's also so helpful to talk to somebody who will say, my husband did that. I found that if I, addressed it by taking care of this, that helped him. And you get very practical tips on caregiving that way.
And feedback from someone who's actually gone through it.
I'm a lawyer, but I've never cared for somebody like that. So somebody a spouse, has done that can offer advice and things that, professionals can't. They really hear it from the person who's gone through it. And I know that, all of us in this room have done some caregiving one way or another. So, we know where it's all coming from.
Well, we said when Hurricane Sandy hit that all of New York suddenly became caregivers.
Yes.
And so many people who lost their homes. My in-laws lost their homes. It meant my father-in-law and brother-in-law, who's his caregiver, full-time caregiver and full-time job, are now displaced living in someone's living room in Long Island. Yes, they're with family, which is wonderful, but it's very upsetting for my father-in-law, who's in his 80s, and he's lived in that home for 50 years, and we're working very hard to get him back into the neighborhood. One of his requests is to, please get me a scooter so I can
Good
stay
for
independent.
Yes, because he sees it as independence.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. And the idea now is we have to get someone in to help, because it is a lot for one family member to be in charge of the medications
and that's why we were doing this, and that's why we want to get people talking about it. Because I know that when my father first fell ill and started to really decline, I started talking about it to the colleagues I had around me, and lo and behold, I found out that some of them had already been through this. They offered advice. They offered equipment that they still had. They gave me a little bit of a roadmap, and part of why we're even here today is that's what brought me to Gregory Johnson, who has been the co-creator of the Family Caregiving Coalition.
Yes.
And so, again, thanks to having you guys here on the show.
Well, Reverend Johnson and Emblem Health in general are pioneers. And they're emulated a lot, never duplicated, as they used to say. But the fact is they're recognizing that the caregiver need
Key feature
is really a pioneering thought, because we would always look at the older adult and what we can do for them, but we didn't realize the importance of supporting the family member. Now, it's a holiday season, and so as Bob was talking about the Alzheimer's Foundation, I was thinking about a part of the Alzheimer's Foundation that a lot of people don't know about. It's in Connecticut, and it's called Dining with Friends, and it is part of the Alzheimer's Association. I discovered it when I was working with the Golden Cuisine food program.
I love that name, Golden Cuisine.
Yes, isn't that great? What it does is it shows you how to eat with somebody that has Alzheimer's in a family setting. It includes placemats for the person so that if they're using their own fork, they know where to put it down. Because sometimes a person with Alzheimer's doesn't know or forgets how to do that. There are special bowls that you could use. I mean, I could go into detail, but the point is it's that organic. And it allows people with Alzheimer's to sit around the Thanksgiving table, the holiday table, and have dinner with their family. In nursing settings and in assisted living settings, the Alzheimer's Foundation comes and they train staff on how to help people eat. Now, whoever did that, whoever thought about that, we didn't, as Bob said, nobody even heard the word Alzheimer's until Bob Butler, who won a Pulitzer, right, for his book, Why Survive in America, talking about aging, brought it up and made it front and center. The other change that I'm seeing, we were talking earlier in the first half of the show about how boomers will embrace the technology more. Here we have, as Bob said, these people wonder because they have Alzheimer's. They wonder. They don't know where they're going. They can have different kinds of chips, and they're really human GPS. They're a GPS. Very resistant sometimes to using it. Whereas my age group, the oldest of the baby boomers, I personally belong to a walking group called Free Walkers. It's just a free organization. We walk 30 to 50 miles. Do you know that we all want one of those now? Because if we're walking in the woods, we want people to be able to find us.
I'm kind of thinking I want one.
Yes, that's how we embrace technology. We're running around trying to get technology that people with Alzheimer's are resisting because we understand technology and what it means to us. So there is a paradigm shift and peer-to-peer changing. As an older adult sees their friend using technology more, accepting help more, right? Understanding aging better, resisting less. They do it too. So the community and staying in community and staying connected to your family and friends has multiple benefits for everybody, as well as occasionally gives respite to the caregiver.
The demographics are such that it's such an important issue. Rose Dobroff, who is a professor at Hunter, who is the leading authority on caregiving in the country, if not in the world, talks about the fact that, all you have to do is look at the old pictures from Passover or Christmas Day, and what do you see? You see, one elderly person, a lot of middle, in the middle generation, and 10 kids around the tree. And look at the one today, and what do you see? 2 kids around the tree and 3 grandparents there. The grandparents are outnumbering the children, and which means that the children, fewer children to care for more grandparents. It's more of a burden. They're living longer. It's more of a more things you have to do. I almost use the term burden. It's not a burden, but it is some things that have to be dealt with. The demographics are so important. We were talking earlier about conflicts with work and home and caregiving. All the conflicts that play out with especially women who work and taking care of their children now play out when they hit their 40s and 50s, and somebody's got to take care of, be the primary caretaker for dad.
And they may have special needs children.
They're caught in the middle, a sandwich generation between the needs of the parent and the child. Rose always said that, and so much of this falls upon women. It's very much a women's issue. Rose used to say that, the old saying that a daughter is a daughter all her life, a son is a son till he takes a wife, plays out. 20 years of research shows that that's what happens.
But it's so important recognizing that. I mean, when the doctor first diagnosed my father, the doctor looked at me and said, "We're going to need you." And he actually, in that moment, I think he was the first one to identify me. And my sister and I worked out a plan going forward to work together.
And you've got to work it out together. And the men are going to have to, the sons, and are going to have to play a bigger role in all of this. Because it just can't fall on the women. They're caught in between on so much of this. The other thing that she used to talk about was, the blood is thicker than water thing, that when it comes down to it and people need help, many times the family gathers around. Well, we live in New York City. I do work with senior centers up on the Upper East Side. So many of those people don't have family here. So the caregiving is being assumed by neighbors and more distant relatives and things like that. And and the good part is most of them seem to realize there's help available out there. But it's people have to step forward to help out here.
See, New York City has a wonderful senior center network, and a lot of senior centers, hundreds of them, and they really do study and understand aging. But there are a lot of areas that don't have that. There are a lot of people who don't go. There are a lot of people who don't know that they're even there and what they provide. So it's another access for the listeners to go to your senior center. You'll find them online. You'll find them through N4A. And you'll be surprised at how many, at how supportive and how helpful that can be. The other thing I wanted to bring out here again for the holiday season, which I would hope that all caregivers could get this education. There's a lot of subtle signs of decline. We've been talking about Alzheimer's. That's a big thing.
Right.
You were talking about mobility issues where your father-in-law asked for a scooter. That's a big thing. But because we as children are in denial, we don't want to see our parents as older. In fact, we accept our own aging a lot easier than we accept our parents' aging. We just don't want to see it. We have to be educated. If you haven't seen a relative for a long time and they come to the holiday table, see if they're clean. There are small things. Mom was meticulous, and all of a sudden there's dirt on her blouse, something she would never do. Well, she probably doesn't know it's there. Other types of things. They used to go out to lunch all the time with a friend, and now their patterns of socialization has changed. Right?
Right.
What's in their refrigerator has changed. Even though they're living independently, even cooking and shopping for themselves. You got to see this, and you have to be aware of it. And that doesn't mean you panic at every turn. But that awareness can mean the difference between them getting the right care or no care. And then, as Bob says, you're coming in, stepping into late in the decline all of a sudden. I have a very good friend who's a gerontologist, and she calls older people potato chips.
Potato chips?
Because they look good, but they break real fast. And that happens. You see somebody who you're just bragging to everybody that your mom is as tough as nails and hasn't lost a marble. And the next day you find that she's collapsed and fallen. And this happens all too often. But it wasn't that sudden. There were signs. So we should look at those
Well,
signs.
are there questions you should ask? Is there if you're not particularly geographically close, or you see your mom once a week, or when you want to start planning, what kind of questions should you ask?
The visit is the best thing. And Adrian's suggestion about open the refrigerator, see what's in there. The other thing is, hi, Mom, what did you have for lunch? What did you have for breakfast? If she may not remember, then you're seeing issues with memory. If she, tells you something, you may say, well, that's unlike her to just do that, or I skipped it, or things like that. And ask about what's happened with the day. See if there's any changes in the pattern. Ask if she's been seeing friends. If she says no, then maybe there's a reason for it. Maybe it's the problems with the friend, not her,
Right.
but maybe there's a reason that she doesn't see friends because it's that much harder. Could be mobility, could be a lot of things.
And we're talking about somebody, why it's so tricky here, who looks good and seems to be okay and is denying any problem.
Right.
So one subtle thing you can see is, have they changed or lost interest in the thing that interested them the most, whatever that may be? Dad was always fishing, and even when he stopped fishing, he read every fishing magazine, and all of a
Right.
sudden he's not interested in fishing.
When I interview people in a psychological setting, we do something called a mental status exam.
Okay.
And in the mental status exam, we ask basic questions like, what's today's date? Current events questions, just to see how with it the person is. And those are also great ways to get a general idea of whether a person's cognitive abilities are declining.
Right.
Do they know what day of the week it is? Are they wearing the appropriate clothing for the weather? Are they forgetful? I mean, these are great ways to figure that stuff out.
You can
early on.
ask the personal ones too, which
Right.
is, have you spoken to the grandchildren? Even see if they remember the names or, their friends and things like that. They may not remember who the president is,
Right.
but, which may not be a big deal. But they may, but if they've forgotten the names of their best friends or the people who live next door, then that probably is even more of a problem.
Actually, I find that they often remember the president they most dislike.
That's true. That's true.
So one of the successes we did have was, I was on the phone with my mom. I guess she was about 89 or 88 years old, and she insisted that everybody call her grandma because her whole life was her grandkids. And I was mentioning my grandson, and she said, who? Yeah. Within a minute, we were in the car, and it was about 40 minutes to her home, and she had had a mini stroke.
Wow.
And that was, I didn't know what it was because I'm not medically inclined at all. I know very little about medicine. But the minute she did not know my son, her grandson, done, we knew that was an issue. But that's not so subtle. That was a big
Sure.
thing. However, being accepting that this could happen was what helped me get in that car and get out there as soon as possible. And that's important. But the other thing is you can have an assessment. There are, but a lot of people don't know about this professional. Bob certainly works with them all the time. Those are geriatric care managers. We talked about geriatric financial planners.
Sure.
Well, this is a group of professionals that will come in to somebody who is older, sit down with them, ask them a lot of questions. Sometimes those assessments are 2 hours long. And if the person is willing to go through it...
I was
they
going to
get-
say,
yeah.
how do you get someone to sign up for that if they're resistant?
Sometimes it is because there's a crisis. And in a way, they have no real choice. They have to do that. Sometimes it's because they do have special insurance coverage, and they feel that they can make a claim and they need to be assessed, and an assessment person will come. But the best spin, put my marketing hat on, is once again, this is to keep you as independent as possible. And the older adult child can say, and it's a favor to me. But otherwise, yes, you can get resistance on getting assessments.
Because really the goal is to keep them in their home as long as possible.
Yes.
It's just best for
they'll
everybody.
buy in with that to that goal.
Inhibit decline, keep the quality of life as high as possible. During one of our breaks, we also talked about some of the technologies that are out there that can really assist us in living longer and more comfortable lives. You want to speak to that?
Well, I mean, there's a group, it's a trade association called Age Tech.
Yeah.
It has 66. It started with 3. Now, soon there's going to be the Consumer Electronics Show, which is very cool. This used to be for televisions, right? And boom boxes and all these things. Well, guess what? There's something called the Silver Summit, which is only technology for older adults. Everything from touchscreen computers for people who are not computer literate, to special phones with big numbers that you can voice call, and many other things.
So there's good things coming up. I think that's all we have time for today. I want to thank our guest. This is, again, episode number 5 in the Family Caregiving program. If you want to find out more information about this program, go to our site, thedrfritzshow.com, and this program will be available there shortly. I want to thank Melissa Nicoletti for being in the studio once again, reading behind the glass, and our distinguished guest here in the studio tonight. We'll be back on the air next week, 10 p.m. on a Thursday night, The Dr. Fritz Show, the show that talks about the psychology of everyday life and brings you people, information, and practices to help you live your life to the fullest. So I want to thank you again for listening. And again, this is Dr. Fritz Gillette. Take care.